So I happened to be watching the news last night, which I'll admit is something I rarely ever do. And I hear the news anchor mentioning something about meal timing, citing an article in the Washington Post yesterday titled, "It's not just what you eat, but the time of day you eat it." The subtitle of the article was, "The timing of your meals can have striking effects on your weight, appetite, and chronic disease risk." As it turned out, I'd seen this article because a friend and reader of my book sent it to me earlier in the day asking my opinion. The gist of the article was that some studies have shown for optimal health, it's best to eat most of your calories earlier in the day, not later. The reasoning behind this is that eating more calories earlier aligns with our circadian rhythms, that innate 24-hour clock that governs many aspects of our health, from our daily hormonal fluctuations and body temperatures to our sleep-wake cycles. I was thinking this harkens back to something I've repeated often for many years, this idea that we should eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, and dinner like a pauper. In other words, taper our calorie intake throughout the day. The author of the article pointed out that in today's busy world, it's common for people to skip out on breakfast and binge at night after a long day at work. One of the researchers who was mentioned in the article said that in her native Spain, their main meal is in the middle of the day from 2 to 3 p.m. She also said that they eat 35 to 40% of their calories in the middle of the day. And even though they eat dinner late, they don't eat very much. So as it turned out, one of the main recommendations at the end of the article was this: don't skip breakfast. And that's where the confusion comes in. Because on the news broadcast, that was the primary point the anchor was making, that according to researchers, if we want to lose weight and be healthier, we shouldn't ever skip breakfast. You know, if there's one thing this has reminded me of, it's that it's really easy to become confused when you're getting advice from different sources. So always consider the source. So what's my take on the article and what I'd recommend you keep in mind? Well, I've got a few things to share. Let's start with this. Never take advice or go by what you hear on the news. It's almost never a reliable source of information when it comes to diet or exercise. Also, remember that every time you see a new article or research study, it's likely that the author has an agenda with the article and is trying to get your attention, or maybe even more, create clicks. This is one reason why it always seems the messaging and advice is always changing, and why there's so much misinformation and confusion, when in reality, what was true many years ago is still predominantly true today. Next, yes, as I talk about in my book, taking steps to align your routine with your natural circadian rhythms is smart. However, I'd recommend the way to do that, just as I say in my book, is by getting outdoors early and exposing your eyes to some sunlight, and then doing some kind of exercise or activity rather than by eating. And then, of course, dialing in your nighttime routine to reduce your exposure to artificial light. Next, yes, it's absolutely true that binge eating late at night isn't healthy or ideal. The whole king-queen pauper approach is definitely a smart approach. But it's also true that if you can extend your non-eating window by eating breakfast a bit later in the morning, especially if you exercise first, you increase the odds of normalizing insulin, becoming a better fat burner, and being healthier and leaner. Just be sure you get in adequate protein and calories in that midday meal so you aren't famished at 9 o'clock, which is the most difficult time of day to be disciplined. Finally, none of this matters one bit if your diet is primarily junk, processed, industrialized foods. If that's the case, start by focusing on improving the quality of what you're eating first before worrying about timing. As always, for more information, check out my book, Age Well and Feel Great.